Welcome to F1 Coffee Corner, Full Beans. I'm your host as always, Terry, and I'm here to keep you up to date with all of the unbiased, hard-hitting Formula One news. So grab your favourite mug of coffee, sit down, strap in and get yourself comfortable to join in the conversation. Because this is F1 Coffee Corner. This is Full Beans, the must-have podcast for all Formula One. Welcome to the final episode of the 2023 season of F1 Coffee Corner, Full Beans. It's been a while since I've done one of these. You'll notice I'm in new surroundings, i.e. the shed. It's cold, excuse my breath. It is freezing out there. I've got my little heater on. I've got my coffee. We're ready to go on what is going to be the F1 Coffee Corner season review episode. Now, what I'm not going to do, I'm not going to go into every single race, all the standings, everything like that, because we'll be here all day and everyone knows I like to talk. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through some quick news on what's been up and coming since the season ended in Abu Dhabi last weekend. We're then going to go into the season review in terms of my thoughts on the teams and a bit looking forward to 2024. And then we're actually going to finish it off with the takeaway, in which I put a couple of videos up on my social media channels where I talked about asking people to put on the highlights of the 2023 season. So we're going to grab the phone and we're going to have a look to see what they thought was the best action from 2023. So with all of that in mind, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, be the first to know when these latest episodes drop, and keep up traction with all of the latest Formula One news, especially during the off season. And let's give it some full beans. Right, so you got to bear with me here because we're going technical. We've got pictures. We've got everything on this new studio. So if it all goes horribly wrong, you'll just have to listen to me filling in the blanks with some just random words. So starting off with the news of the week. Oh dear, I can't believe that words. Right, so news of the week. What have we got? We've got the Williams update in terms of drivers coming for you, and that is breaking news. That is hot off the press today. We've got sprint format and 2024 changes that are coming in. We've got some driver rumours, which includes trainers, because it seems to be trainer silly season at the moment. And I've got the latest data from the Pirelli tire test that was brought to you at the end of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix weekend. So on the Tuesday after the Grand Prix finished. Not much to talk about in terms of the times, but we have got them to look at. And of course, the drivers who took part of that. So let's have a look at it. So Williams update. So breaking news literally only happened an hour ago. And that is that Williams have re-signed Logan Sargeant for another season. So that is the grid finally completed for 2024 with Logan Sargeant keeping his place alongside Alex Albon. Now, there's a lot of debate over this. There was some talk about Frederic Vesti being involved, Teo Pourchaire, even Felipe Drugovich, but it seems that Williams have stuck to what they know. They've gone with a driver from the driver academy. It's not that much of a surprise, if I'm honest. It was on the cards. The noises coming out of Williams certainly shows that they were going to continue Logan Sargeant. Could they have gone in a different direction? It's hard to tell. I feel you would have been swapping a rookie for another rookie, which, as we know, is a big gamble. And I think James has kind of gone with, one, what he knows, and two, I really think that Williams want the driver academies to succeed. I got to go onto the James Vowles question answer debrief of the season today on the Williams app, and he's just so eloquent when you listen to him. Mercedes certainly missed him on that front. Listen to the debriefs. They don't quite sound the same as when James did them. When you listen to the Vowles verdict from Williams, he just puts you at ease. He's a calming influence. And I think he genuinely wants to see the driver academy actually succeed. So that's why I think they've gone to Logan Sargeant. Could they have got better? I think the next season's the driver's market. It is a one-year deal. It still puts them in the frame for next year when silly season, which we'll come on to later, absolutely is going to be upon us. So, yeah, a sensible choice by Williams in terms of keeping everything the same. It allows them to focus and kick on. Right, sprint format is next up. Now, we haven't been told what the sprint format is going to be yet. So there is an FIA meeting at the beginning of next year, and they are going to ratify all of the changes coming forward. But what we're hearing is there's a change to the sprint format in the sense of on the Friday, we're looking like we're going to get FP1. So that's as normal. Then we're going to get the qualifying for the sprint race on Friday afternoon, straight Friday evening, which is different. So instead of qualifying for the race on Sunday, it's going to be qualifying for the sprint race on Saturday. And then on Saturday morning is going to be the sprint itself, followed by qualifying on Saturday for the race on Sunday. Now, the big advantage to this is Parc Ferme. So what this will enable the cars to do is come out of Parc Ferme, it looks like, after the sprint race on Saturday. So it will allow them to make changes to their car. Now, they're not going to have any sessions to run these changes on their car, but they will have had, obviously, data from the sprint qualifying and the sprint race itself, as well as FP1. So they're going to have a load of data going on for it. So don't be surprised if you see that one come in. I think it's a good format in terms of getting around the Parc Ferme problems. And the other thing we're looking at is the possibility of it being a standalone sort of tournament. So the points don't go to the constructors or the drivers' championship. They go into a separate pot. That's one that's being used about. And there is also talk of reverse grids, but we're not sure that all of the teams are going to sign off on that one. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go for that. We are hearing that the venues are being decided. I can't remember what they're off the top of my head. I know China's in there. I know Qatar's in there. I know that Brazil's in there again. And then I think the rest are unchanged. So I think they're all the same with the addition of China coming in. But I will double check that for you because generally, top of my head, I can't remember what they're rumored to be at all. But yeah, that's the sprint format. People thought it might go away. It's not going to go away. It is definitely here to stay. Then we've got 2024 changes. So what I mean by this is what the FIA have said is happening. So first thing is tyre blankets are out until, well, they're out until 2026 at the earliest, but basically they're out for 2025, 2024 as well. So they're basically gone at the moment. Let's be honest about it. Pirelli are saying that they'd rather focus their effort into getting the tyres right. A lot of criticism, obviously, this year over the tyres. In terms of tyres, the other thing that's gone for the 2024 season is the alternative tyre allocation. Now, you remember, this is one that was run twice this year, which is where during Q1, you actually run the hards, Q2, you actually run the mediums, Q3, you actually run the softs. So what's happened is that's been scrapped as well. So it's back to free tyre choice for drivers. So that isn't coming back at all. It's going to be as it was. The allocation is remaining the same. So they basically scrapped that one. In terms of what's happening with, we've heard about the sort of mud guards, the sort of weather guards that are going on the cars. There was a trial issue at Silverstone. That unfortunately failed. It didn't give them the results they wanted. They've gone back to the drawing board and they're going to try that again in the spring of next year. So that's another trial with a new design. They've got the teams on board to help them with the design in the hope it helps. And we've also just literally a couple of days ago heard about driver cooling updates. So they're looking at options in extreme weather. So they're going to look at a little sort of scoop, a little slit underneath to drive the air into the driver's cockpit. They're looking at increasing the minimum weight allowance so drivers could potentially have the cooling vest on while they're driving as well. So they are looking at a few options to help making sure that what didn't happen in Qatar happens again. Obviously, we're going to be there later this year, so it's not going to be the same sort of impacts as what we saw this year. So I think that's going to be a big plus for them. And then we come to driver rumours. Now, obviously, with Logan Sargent, that's the drivers out. So driver rumours that we're certainly hearing about is more around the trainers. So we know that Bradley has left Max Verstappen. We know that Michael has left Yuki. And it seems that Carlos's trainer, Rupert, has gone to Max. So there's going to be a big sort of move around in terms of the drivers' trainers, which is, of course, their closest confidence. They are the ones who spend the most time with the drivers, during the off season, getting them ready. All of this time is spent together. So a lot of big changes happening. And we saw that actually the impact of Lewis losing Angela had. So don't underestimate that impact at all in terms of what it's going to have on drivers. But that's what we've got for that. Then we've got the Pirelli tyre test. So this is a data. I'll bring it up here for you now. So all of this data, now what you've got to bear in mind is there is no new parts on the car. It isn't respective in the sense of, how flat out they're going. A lot of young drivers in there. This test is normally designed to give drivers a chance to get to know their new teams when they change over seats. We saw last year, obviously, Fernando in the famously unbranded Aston Martin due to contracts. We saw Gasly in the Alpine, all those things. That's not happened this year because we haven't had the drivers change. So it's a bit different. You can see from the times there, we've got Esteban Ocon, who used the C5 compound. He had the best time of 1 minute 24.393, which was set towards the end of the day at 5:05. And all the way down the bottom, you got Alex Albon. He was on the C2 tyres, a short stint in the morning, 1 minute 27.824. Set at lunchtime on there. Some really good performances, though. You've got Pato O'Ward in there. You've got Vesely in there. You've also got Jack Durham in there. You've got Robert Schwartzman in there. And Teo Pourchaire, Felipe Drugovich. Jake Dennis, was great to see Jake Dennis in a Red Bull in a Formula 1 car. Obviously, does a lot of sim work for Red Bull, has done since 2018. So it's good to see him getting back on the track and getting some performance in there. Like I say, not a lot you can tell from these times. George Russell, obviously big story of the day, decided he'd had enough of the W14 and just completely binned it into the wall, and that was it. Only joking, he genuinely had a fault which caused him a crash, so he didn't deliberately bin it in the wall before anyone jumps to me for that one. But yeah, it's safe to say that this doesn't give us much of a sort of go on who's going to be who for next season. In fact, it gives us very little, but I just thought it'd be nice to add it in there and sort of, see if anyone wants to get that data, see if you want to compare the times. But like I say, Pato O'Ward's quite interested up there, Vesti interested up there, very close to their competition, very close to the other driver driving as well. So certainly ones to watch for the future, that's for sure. Now, we come on to the best part of the podcast, the whole part of the podcast, and that is the season review. The year of the bull. Can we call it anything else? Let me have a swig of my coffee. And while I'm sipping on coffee, we will have that went on far too much longer for that one. But yeah, so here we go. The year of the bull. And we can only call it that, can't we? I mean, I'll put the Constructors' Championship up. Red Bull at the top. Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, Aston Martin, Alpine, Williams, strong performance from Williams, AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo, and Haas. Like I said, I'm going to go into this in a bit more detail in a second in terms of the teams and the drivers. I'm not going to dissect the races. I'm not going to go into that much detail. I have got some content coming over the winter where I'm going to drill into this a lot more. So what I'm going to do over the winter is a series of podcasts which basically looks at the individual team's performance and the drivers head-to-head and how they did in the championship. So don't worry, you're not getting all the information on this one. This is a genuine overview of what's been going on. And then, of course, we've got the Drivers' Championship as well. Max, obviously, championing the first time in a row. Checo locking out second. First ever 1-2 for Red Bull. All the way down to Nick De Vries in 22nd. And Logan Sargent having the unluckiest of being 21st in a 20-man championship. How bizarre is that? That's for sure. But yeah, there we have it. That is the Drivers' Standing Championship. So we had Max, Sergio, Lewis, Fernando, Charles, Lando, Carlos, George, Oscar, Lance, Pierre, Esteban, Alex, Yuki, Valtteri, Nico, Daniel, Joe, Kevin, Liam, Logan, and Nick De Vries finishing off the bottom. And like I said, for the Constructors' Championship, we had Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, Aston Martin, Alpine, Williams, AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo, and Haas for that one. So with that in mind, let's do the season debrief. So 2023, it was a season that we hoped would see the start of the closing up of the field. It ended on a season of what can only be described as complete dominance from Max Verstappen and, of course, the Red Bull team. Max led what's probably the most dominant season ever in Formula One on his way to a third straight World Drivers' Championship. But we're going to cover more of that later on because I don't want to do that part first because everyone will switch off. We're going to start off at the back of the pack, which means, unfortunately, we're going to start off with Haas. Now, the early season was started with much optimism, especially when in 4 out of the first 5 races, we saw the Haas team scoring points. We really thought they'd turn the corner. We really thought they'd come out the block flying into what was a good season. But as the season wore on, this early promise completely diminished, with the point scoring turning into fewer and far opportunities as Haas ended the season in 10th place and rock bottom of the Constructors' Championship, a position which surely has to put Gunter at some sort of scrutiny. Now, the drivers, Nico Hulkenberg and Kevin Magnussen, saw this season as a complete step back for the team, calling it disappointing and upsetting with the lack of progress and their sheer frustration at the lack of development that the team brought forward. We even saw Hulkenberg going back to the previous car. It wasn't the best season for Haas. They've got to do better next season, that's for sure. And always there's going to be some sort of scrutiny into that team. 9th place, we've got Alfa Romeo, who will, of course, be changing their name for 2024 and leaving us, and, of course, reverting back to Sauber before Audi join us in 2026. Now, they're clearly at a crossroads. They're clearly at a crossroad point in the team with one focus on 2026, and that's causing such uncertainty and lack of performance currently. My personal view is that Joe and Bottas, the best they can expect for is more of the same for next season, resigning to picking up a scrappy few points here and there and hoping that some good performances are going to actually secure their places next season. There's not a lot I can say on their season. It's just been mediocre, 9th place, 1 on the future, really troubling if you're a Sauber stroke Alfa Romeo fan. Then we've got AlphaTauri. That's the team that's undergoing a change both on and off the track with a name change coming. We all know what that one's going to be now. And also a driver change that they implemented partway through the season. This season was clearly one of transition. They've got a new team principal coming in 2024 with Laurent Mekies taking over from Franz Tost. And of course, they've already got Peter Bear on board as the CEO. We're seeing a closer synergy with Red Bull, and that synergy saw their performance improve towards the latter end of the season as the team started adopting many parts from the Red Bull team. The plan for 2024 is to take as much as they can from Red Bull and climb at the standings. They've made that abundantly clear. We obviously had Danny's injury in the Dutch Grand Prix, which saw an impressive debut and some performances from Liam Lawson, who managed to not only get some points, but show us exactly what he can do in a Formula One car. And it's certainly not the end for Liam Lawson in a Red Bull or an AlphaTauri. I think that, from that point of view, his future is bright. It's disappointing that he's not going to get it, but certainly, his potential for a seat is there. Now, we've got Yuki, who's seemingly being helped by the Honda deal to keep his seat for another year, a deal which, as it edges closer to 2026, is going to see a split on his position, and his position is certainly weakened in the team. However, as a team as a whole, they're going to be buoyed by the end of the season upturn they produce. Yuki started finding some form at the end of the season, and Danny will hopefully be injury-free and back into it, which bodes well for moving up the grid next season, that's for sure. 7th place in what has to be one of the surprises of the season, the Williams team. A car that for a number of years we've seen has raw pace, but seemingly lacking the aero package to compete in Formula One. It's all the first season under the very impressive James Vowles. He is doing absolutely fantastic job at Williams. He's installing the growing confidence that the Grove-based team are on the right track at last after years of just basically surviving. When you listen to him, he's got a plan, he's got a vision, he's got the back of the board, and he's just so calm and calculated. I think that James Vowles could be their best season signing ever. This was their best place since 2017, and it was obviously driven by the stellar performances of Alex Albon, who's rebuilt his reputation after Red Bull, and is now starting to show with some performances that many didn't actually feel was possible after he departed Red Bull. Now, that's going to put him in the driver market, that's for sure. There is going to be an option for Alex Albon, I feel, and Williams are going to have to show some improvement if they're going to keep Alex Albon when silly season starts in 2024. 6th place was a disappointing Alpine. A really bad season for them, marred in off-field activity and an even more disappointing on-track performance. The season started off well. There was early promise. There was talk that Alpine, this was the year for them. They had a light car. They had solved their engine problems. They were going to hit the ground running. They were going to start challenging for podiums, for wins. And what happened is that early promise turned into disappointment and inconsistency for the whole remainder of the season. We didn't know which Alpine was going to show up. One minute we had an Alpine that was struggling for points. The next minute we had an Alpine that could challenge for a podium. It was literally flip a coin and see what you got. Ocon was obviously marred with all of his DNS, and Gasly just never seemed to get going. However, the end of season investment with all of those superstars provided some much needed positive press for Alpine to finish off the season. They have 2 good drivers. The car is going to be a struggle again next season, I feel, and the engine performance is something that's certainly hindering them, and one which I feel is going to be really hard to overcome in this current regulation. We then come on to the top half of the constructors, and it now seems strange to be saying that 5th place for Aston Martin is disappointing, considering this time last year where we were with the Aston Martin team. They would have taken, bit your arm off for 5th place. The season started with this early whispers that we heard that the team were onto something big, and they came out of the blocks flying, and they certainly looked like the closest competitors to the Red Bull crown as we started the season. They were literally, they were going all guns for it. But it was with one driver. Lance struggled early season, especially after his injury, and the evergreen Alonso just picked up podiums for fun at the start of the season. The middle of the season was marked with upgrades not working for the team, causing them to drop off. But by the end of the season, performance for them, not only Fernando, but also Lance, have put them in a good position and certainly bodes well for next season for what has to be the surprise package of the season. We know they had problems. They look like they fixed them. They look like towards the end of the season they were getting back to their best and overcome whatever hit them in the mid-season, and they're certainly going to be a force next season, I feel. Fourth, and McLaren in what has to be the transformation of the season from backmarkers to podium chasers. It is one of the most remarkable changes I've seen in the season. The nightmare that was early season in Bahrain seems a distant memory now for McLaren fans. The development, which they admitted went wrong over the winter period, with obviously the issues they saw with the floor, they admitted it took them down the wrong path. They got it wrong. They couldn't overcome it quick enough. But then we saw them emerge from Silverstone, from the Silverstone shadows, with a car that certainly taken elements from the RB19 design, and it was instantly quick, with both Lando and Oscar both starting to battle for podiums. Lando, he did well to get 6 runners-up spots, and also there was, of course, Oscar's sprint win, showing a glimpse into what is going to be a strong, bright future for McLaren. There's no doubt about it. Oscar had a great rookie season. Lando, he's shown that side. He just needs to get a win. He needs to take that step up and get that confidence going. But McLaren, I feel, have one of the strongest lineups on the grid currently. Third place podium goes to Ferrari, the team that managed to halt the Red Bull clean sweep in Singapore. A season not too dissimilar to Alpine in the sense you don't know which Ferrari will come and play. You just didn't know. It was literally potluck. Over a single lap, undoubtedly one of the fastest cars on the grid, especially with Charles showing that pace, that raw pace that Ferrari's got, but then just unable to convert that into race pace at all. Carlos showing some solid points as there ended very little to choose between the two drivers. The team do look more settled under Fred. That's something I have noticed. And they're going to be hoping that the winter development can finally solve the tyre deg that has hampered them all year. They need to sort that problem out. They need to get that Ferrari race pace going. And the fans will certainly be hoping there's an overhaul in the often ridiculed strategy department. Did the tyre problems cause the strategy department to not be as bold as they could have been? Was that an issue? Either way, Ferrari and strategy is becoming a bit of a meme, and they need that to stop for next season, especially with contract renewals being up. Both drivers are up for renewals. Both drivers want to be a number one driver. And if I'm honest, it's going to have implications over who stays with Ferrari, because I don't think they can continue with both drivers in this team. Second place went to Mercedes. Quite a surprise. On paper, they improved on last season's performance. But if you listen to Lewis and Toto, it's been a season of doom and gloom. Often heard apologising for the car on the team radio. The biggest story to come out of the season was, of course, the ditching of the zero side pod concept for Monaco after obviously Imola was cancelled, and the introduction of what we now know as the W14B. 0 wins for the team, a team very much in a transition period in terms of their development, with, of course, James Allison leading in charge, giving fans optimism that they just might get it right with the W15, and it's going to be a step in the right direction. The one thing I will say with the W15, they are changing everything, though. It is a risk. It is a gamble for Mercedes once more. If they don't get this right, there's going to be problems, because they're talking about changing literally everything. I think I've got the quote from Toto here. Let me find it. Toto said, "We're changing the concept. We are completely moving away from how we laid out the chassis, the weight distribution, the airflow, literally every component that's being changed, because only by doing that do we think we've got a chance." Now, that is a risky move from Mercedes. They're not sticking with what they got. They are going for it. And they've got it wrong 2 years in a row. And it's going to be really interesting to see what they come out with in Bahrain, and whether or not they can make the similar sort of steps in terms of performance gains that we've seen from Aston Martin, from McLaren, in terms of this big leap. If they can make that, then Mercedes might just have a chance to compete again. If not, then it's going to be game over for Mercedes in this current regulation. It's now or never for them. It's gonna either bring them into play, or it's going to put them even further away from the top, with the likes of Aston Martin and McLaren overtaking them. It's a gamble, but it's a gamble that I think is worth taking. I agree with what Toto's saying. What he's saying is if we can't win it, then what's the point? They're out to win it, and it's a bold move again. Yeah, the conservative move would have been to see what you've got on the W14, develop it, and take it into W15. James Allison does not like that idea. They're saying that he's not been doing a lot of work on the W14, that he's been focused solely on W15. It remains to be seen whether or not he's going to produce a rabbit out of the hat, and whether or not they can challenge Red Bull. Coming on to Red Bull, we've got their first ever 1-2 finish. There was a thought on how do Red Bull take the RB18 further. And then we witness a Red Bull team that have, well, they've just created the same winning culture that we used to associate with Mercedes. They've created total confidence in their team, confidence in their choices, winners throughout their whole team, whether that be drivers, strategy, pit crew. Every single member of that team is performing at the top of the game. And the RB20 has got a tough act to follow. But with Max firmly making sure we're in the Max Verstappen era, it's hard to see how it's going to end and the rest of the grid can close that gap, that's for sure. Because ultimately, I feel it's going to be Red Bulls to lose again next year. That is pretty much, my end of season review of the teams. It's not that long, I know. My next part is I'm going to come on to where I'm going to talk about just what actually Red Bull achieved with Max Verstappen, because there's rightly a lot of accolades on the RB19 and the performance of the car, but you need driver and car and synergy. You need both of them working together. And I feel that sometimes Max isn't getting enough credit. So let's just have a look at some of the things that Max actually, his record year in Formula One. So we're going to go through these now because this is phenomenal. So 86.4% win rate, 19 wins from 20 races. 575 points from a possible 620. That is domination. I'm sorry, there's no other word for it. 290 points clear at the top of the championship. 11 hat-trick weekends. 1,003 laps led. And then don't stop there, does it? So in terms of that, we've got his actual records. Highest percentage of wins in the season. Most wins in the season. Most points in the season. Most consecutive wins. Most podiums in the season. Most laps led in the season. Highest percentage of laps led in the season, most consecutive wins from pole, most wins from pole in the season, highest points gap between first and second in the standings, most consecutive races as a championship leader, most consecutive points scored, most consecutive top two finishes, most hat-tricks in the season, most pit stops by the winning driver in one race. I mean, that's what I didn't see coming. And the only driver to win 3 times in one country. Obviously, that's a geographical one, but it's still there. It's still a record. And that's my point. You can't take this away from Max. How can we take away that this has been nothing but sheer dominance from Max Verstappen? Yes, he's been given a car to get that dominance. Yes, the RB19 is one of the best cars on the grid. And how do we do that? But the RB20's got a tough act to follow. But let's not take away anything from Max's performance. Max has been the standout performance of the season without a shadow of a doubt. And if I had my hat, I'd tip it to Max, because Max Verstappen is a driver to beat. Red Bull are the team to beat. Do I think we're going to see it next season? I'm not sure. I'm not sure the team are going to have enough to compete in terms of getting close to Red Bull. I think that Red Bull has still got performance in hand. I've said this quite a few times. I think that they can take that performance and still go a bit further. I don't think they've played everything turned up. I worry in terms of, where do you take the RB20 in terms of development? We know that the RB19 was a car which was a lot lighter because of the carbon fiber they used in it and the chassis in it. They used a lot lighter materials on it. They put the new rear suspension in it, and including the front suspension. So I'm not quite sure what it is you put into the sort of RB20 to make the RB19 better. I'm sure Adrian Newey's got some up his sleeves. I'm sure that actually there's something which, he's got in terms of he can do it. But for Max and for Red Bull, the 2023 season has just been utter domination. And for that, there you have it. Right. We're coming on to the takeaway part of the podcast. So this is a bit where I asked on social media if fans could put on there what they actually liked about the 2023 season. What was their highlights? Let me grab a sip of coffee. Hopefully everyone's still with me. Let me grab my phone. Excuse me. And let's have a look what people actually put on the podcast. So right, so we've got Emma said that Norris getting second at Silverstone was just amazing. Then Oscar winning the sprint and Yuki in the last race, but there was so many to choose from. We got Daniel saying Yuki leading 5 laps in Abu Dhabi. Alex says Hamilton's pole was number 1, but also Oscar's sprint win and Lewis chasing down Max at COTA and Sainz's DRS to Lando to win. Alex, you obviously found quite a few. Nadine said Hamilton getting P2 podiums. Obviously not a Hamilton fan, or maybe a Hamilton fan as in the performance was getting better. I'll let Nadine tell us that one. Ben said the hype I had when McLaren led the first few laps of the British Grand Prix. Witnessing that myself, I'd have to agree with it. We had Alphonse Supremacy, Lewis on COTA having on the edge of your seat, but that may be bias. Leclerc v Checo as well. Definitely Leclerc v Checo. Carrot Angler, seeing a 43-year-old giving those kids a schooling, made me feel like I've still got a chance. I'm with you on that one. We've got Anthony saying the Merc being useless, clearly not a Mercedes fan. We've got Kimberly saying 2 great moments, Liam knocking out Max in qualifying at Singapore, and the last one, Oscar winning sprint race in Qatar. We've got Scout Sleep with Lando Norris leads the British Grand Prix. Travelling Gamer, Xander thought was the race I started watching Formula 1 again. Leclerc's dive on Checo, moment of the year. Rick has put favourite clip was Alonso and Checo. Final lap in Brazil. Favourite race as a whole was COTA. Definitely COTA. I've got some real good vibes about going to COTA. Then we've got Frankly FM84. Favourite race would be Zandvoort for the madness. Favourite moment, Ocon's overtake at Yuki at Spa. Just go down. Benjamin, like the first half where Alonso was competing every race for a podium. Then we saw it come in. Brazil final laps. Josh, Xander thought for sure. Absolute chaos. And Liam. Old Bogan 50 plus. Favourite part of the entire season was Max on the final podium with a tear in his eye. Love his passion in his drive. Steve, surprising that McLaren with Norris and Piastri start slowly, came on during the season. Vinay, it'd be wrong of me not to say Vinay after supporting my lies, has got Lewis at COTA chasing Max down. Let's have a look what people were putting on Instagram as well. We've got Claire saying that Lando leading the first lap at Silverstone and his podium. Crowd went mental. They did. I was there. Absolutely loved it. Also, Alonso in Miami. One of my favourite scenes has to be Alonso asking how Lance is getting on while watching the big screens during Miami. I thought that was funny. Jacob, Lando leading at Silverstone. Will have been at the Vegas Grand Prix. Indy Box, how Red Bull were baffled in Singapore. Yes, so some real interesting comments there on the season. I've had some highlights. I've had such great opportunities this season, and I want to thank everyone who supported the page. I want to thank everyone who likes the video, shares the videos, comments, drops into the lives, listens to the podcasts. It's been for me. It's been a long year, but it's been so rewarding. I've done some amazing stuff. Red Bull factory parties, Aston Martin car launch party, Silverstone, the paddock. First ever Grand Prix with my dad. Watching my dad seeing cars come out on track was quite truly a proper choking moment that we managed to get that. Something he talked about so long, something growing up we'd discussed, something I never done, and just to see it in that qualifying session on that Saturday was something else. We've obviously had Silverstone Hotel, we've had Silverstone Rooftop Party from Amy, great friends along the way, amazing community that everyone's got there. Ultimately, all of you lot are what provides the drive for you to carry on and be better. Ultimately, I do this, but it's nothing without people interacting, and it's nothing without people coming in and sharing it like it. So I genuinely hope you all enjoy the content. Want to thank you all for coming. Want to thank absolutely every single person for supporting. It's not over. Lots of content coming in the off season. There's podcasts coming. There is some new stuff. I am very excited. Before I disappear, 2024, I have found some new ways to interact with everybody. It's a bit technical. It might go horribly wrong, but it will make some of the videos a lot more exciting. And it's certainly, for me, I feel it's going to be a game changer. So keep your eyes peeled for that. There's obviously the work that I'm going to be doing with FanAmp as well. We've got some great stuff coming over the off season as well. So if you haven't already downloaded the app, certainly follow FanAmp on social media. Obviously, keep your eye on mine. That's another shameless plug that if you haven't already, hit subscribe, hit follow, hit like, hit share, do whatever you want, because ultimately, I can't do any of this without all of you lot doing what you do. So as I round off 2023, I hope you've enjoyed it. It's not the last is it last podcast of the season? It's the last podcast of the season, but it won't be the last one in the year because, like I say, I'm going to come back with some more drivers sort of breakdown, some more information on the head-to-head and that side of things. But I'm going to do that probably 2 at a time on the podcast. So I'm going to put it up on social media. So keep your eyes peeled of what teams are coming up. And if you want me to answer anything or include anything, drop it in the comments and I'll make sure I include it. But that's me just saying, do you know what? Thank you very much for 2023. Your support is invaluable. And I'll see you all soon.